entertaining, and they were, competitions, and there were trophies, but it also was, and still is, obviously, about giving love and support when everybody isn't getting that from their biological family, from the society, and just in general. And that impressed me. That was exciting and significant. It's what kept drawing me, to want to make the film.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about Pepper LaBeija.
Pepper, Pepper was, you still think of the person as, someone's gone, but they're still there in a sense in your mind, and in, Pepper, such a strong person, funny person, wise person. So Pepper had such perspective. I mean, the older people in the ball world. I knew Pepper as I was making a film, so I can't tell you so much about Pepper personally. But as the person that I filmed, Pepper was just so perceptive, and we could talk about anything. So there's an outtake in the DVD where Pepper's talking about war and just talking about, what the military is for, and that, we say it's for the defense, but we invade other countries. Pepper could talk to you about, the global position of America in the world, or talk to you about what it's like to grow up, as a trans or cross-dressing kid. Pepper could talk to you about the struggle of the kids in her house, or his house. I think Pepper actually used both genders, depending on how, what state mode of dress he was using. I know Pepper was also is a biological parent of children. I don't know. I just felt like Pepper, like Dorian. Pepper and Dorian obviously have very different senses of humor and very different ways of talking, but the elders of the community at the time, I just felt like they could, you could ask those folks anything, and they'd have a really funny, brilliant, distinct answer. And as a young filmmaker trying to make a film that was largely about talking, that was incredible, incredible. And also, Pepper obviously as a ball walker, on point, funny, precise, whether it's the gold dress you see in the beginning of the film, or you see Pepper walking military in this, precise military outfit, or in the sort of, beads and feathers mode, which would have been more of the earlier ball walking days. Very much on point, both with the outfits and with the walking, and with having people in the house who were loyal to the house.
Wow. Now, how about Dorian Corey?
So Dorian Corey, pardon me, Dorian Corey was brilliant, and sometimes I used to go up to her house. First she was living at 150th and St. Nicholas in a basement apartment, and then she moved to across from City College at 137th Street. So Dorian and I would play Scrabble, and I come from a family of Scrabble players. Wow. And, I have a really, as you said, I went to Yale, I studied English, I think of myself as, well-read and articulate, but I have a family where if I play Scrabble with them, I feel really stupid, because they're, really good, and they always win, and I can never beat them, and I can't think of any words, and they think of all the words. So Dorian was just like my family in that. I play Scrabble with her, and she just, always beat the pants off me, always make me feel stupid that way. But as a person, she could be shady in a fun way, but she wasn't shady. She was really, I don't know, she just was an intelligent, smart in terms of how she lived her life, loved the balls, was an entertainer, did entertain at Sally's, but, she had always a really nice apartment, bolts and bolts and bolts and bolts and bolts of fabric in the apartment, because part of what she did was to sew for a living. She'd make gowns. I think some for ball people, but also for a lot of straight ladies. She, I don't know, she just had that wit. You wanted to be around her because she was funny. She always had two televisions going on at the same time, as you could kind of see in the movie. she worked really hard. You know, she was a hard worker. She was always sewing. She was always going down to do a gig at a club. And she had a partner named Leon, you know, who lived with her, and he was very devoted. And when she passed away, I was there in the hospital that week. She passed away of AIDS, and I held her hand, and she was just like one of the people that I lost in that era that I couldn't believe I was losing, you know, because she was already in her 50s. I just thought she'd be there forever, and she was very supportive in terms of, you know, getting the movie out, and I think obviously she enjoyed her own sort of role as being a great wit. That line, you know, at the end of Paris is Burning, if you shoot an arrow and it goes real high, hooray for you. That whole paragraph is profound. You know, it's about how you live your life. You know, you may want to be famous, you may want to be rich, but, you know, you do your best and, you know, just try and live your life and do your best and enjoy your life. I mean, it's like she's a Zen master, right? Wow. I mean, it's wisdom. And I felt honored to have had the opportunity to interview people like Pepper and Dorian, who, you know, they don't just have wisdom for bald people or just wisdom for New Yorkers or, you know, just wisdom for gay people or just wisdom for African-American, trans, you know, however, it's just simply wisdom. And I think that's one of the reasons the film has such a huge crossover, because people know when people are talking to you and they are profound speakers and they have something deep to say, you know it, and you receive it, and you're grateful for it. And I think it's what makes the film good, you know, because they participate. They did a great job of saying these things, and we did a good job of editing those things and putting them in the right proportion to the performance parts of the film.
Wow, amazing. Now, you know, I just have to ask this one question.
Mm-hmm.
I have to squeeze one in there. There is a scandal. You know, everyone knows about Mummy Dearest. I don't know if you know who Mummy Dearest with Dorian Corey said. There's a rumor saying that she had a mummy.
Yes.
I think his name was Robert, was it?
Okay, well, I don't know about the name, but, you know, you can listen to the commentary track on the DVD, and Freddie Pendavis, a.k.a. Skylar, gives a whole explanation, knowing more than I ever did. I will say that, as I said before, I spent some time in that apartment, not only both apartments, right? The one in the basement and the one fourth-floor walk-up, and that was the one where she was living when she passed away, and it did not occur to me that there was a mummified human in a trunk. And it did not. And, you know, I don't know any. All I know is what was reported in the paper. I know what people said after, that it was someone who pulled something. And, you know, maybe she clocked him and, you know, and he died, and she had some embalming skills. And rather than go to jail, you know, or have to explain something, she used those embalming skills and kept that person for however many years it was. That's what I was told. I frankly, when I read that, I mean, I couldn't have been more surprised, because you hang out in someone's apartment playing Scrabble and talking and filming, and I don't think there are many bodies in trunks in many of the apartments I go to, but ever since that happened, I figure you never know.
Right, you never know. Wow, amazing. Dorian Corey. Let's talk a little bit about Angie Extravaganza.
Okay. Fierce mother of her house, funny, hard-edged, you know, caring mother to her children. I mean, there's some Jennie Extravaganza. We didn't interview him face-to-face. I don't know if we did and didn't use the footage. I don't remember, actually, probably. I mean, I know there was footage of him, and for whatever reason it didn't make it into the film. But there's a lot of him talking, that his audio interviews that are in the film. And, you know, he's the one who says in the narration, the voiceover narration, you know, she always gives me a present on my birthday. My real mother doesn't give me one. And, you know, so I think she was really good to the children of her house. in terms of just providing moral support, sometimes providing a place to sleep. I know that some other extravaganzas did pay for her. Well, I won't say the word that it says in the film, but her breasts, and she, I don't know, she's very fierce, very strong. She's a very fierce, strong person, great ball walker, hard life, hard health problems in the end. I was really, really honored that, we shot the film in '87, and Venus was in the film, and then Venus was murdered. And we wanted to portray that Venus was murdered respectfully, because you don't want to portray it in a way that's disrespectful or feels like you're providing entertainment based on the fact that somebody met a tragic end. Obviously, what Venus did in terms of sex work, in terms of being a small person, was risky, was dangerous, was scary. I mean, already she had talked about circumstances where she was threatened. And so the fact that Angie was willing, in '89, when we did the coda, when we were getting ready to finish the film, and we needed to update in terms of Venus having died and Willie having succeeded in the fashion world, I was glad that she did that, because it to me, I mean, other people may agree or disagree, but it makes it respectful that she'll talk about the daughter of her house, and that, you see on her face, she doesn't cry in the interview, but you see the trauma of the police showing her this person that she loved. So I appreciate that she did that. I think that was in David DePina's apartment, and I appreciate it, because it was a hard story to have to tell, but we couldn't not tell the story, and it is part of the reality, as Angie says. That's part of the reality and I think, I don't know, I just appreciate that she did that, and I miss her, and I feel like the health issues that many of the queens and trans women have to go through are really severe, and I think we don't have good health care for trans people. We still don't have, even after Obamacare, really great health care for people. And the fact that so many people are gone is in part due to that.
Wow. Must have been hard feeling not, wanted or not fitting in a society where you need the society support.
I mean, a friend of mine who is a white trans guy who had surgery, lives on the West Coast, was on the West Coast, in San Francisco, was talking about having to enlighten the medical staff of a major hospital that trans people exist. Like they couldn't wrap their minds around his gender identity. So, and this was, I think it was a sort of regular old surgery. I don't think it was a particularly, I don't think it was a particularly major surgery. But I mean, we need health care that doesn't discriminate, based on gender identity, and obviously based on class and race and geography. There are all kinds of problems getting good health care, but for trans people, to have to sort of educate and explain at the point that they need medical care is an added insult, to having health issues, which all of us have and will have.
Wow. Let's talk a little bit about Octavia St. Laurent.
So Octavia is, in the film, she and Venus are kind of like the dreaming young ladies. They're the people with big dreams. That's how we portrayed them in the film. She obviously was incredibly, incredibly beautiful. Also funny, also talented. I know later on there's an interview that somebody did with her shortly before she died where she says that was the time at which she was interviewed was a hard time for her. That it was a time when she was struggling with drugs, which was something I did not know. But that, we were all really young. I was 23. Octavia was around the same age. But, she was struggling with how to be a young trans person, where to fit in, who to date, Again, the AIDS crisis